The old statue stood at the heart of the town square, covered in years of dust and forgotten whispers. People walked by it every day, never giving it a second glance. It had been there for as long as anyone could remember, just a cold, lifeless piece of stone. But one little girl saw something no one else did. Her name was Lily. She was only 8 years old, a quiet child with big, curious eyes and a mind that never stopped wondering. She lived just a few blocks away from the statue and passed by it every morning on her way to school. But, unlike everyone else, she noticed it. She wasn't sure why, but something about it made her stop. Maybe it was the way it seemed to watch the world go by. Maybe it was the strange sadness in its eyes, if a statue could even have sadness. One day, as she stood in front of it, she did something no one had ever done before. She spoke to it. "Hello," she said softly, tilting her head. "Do you ever get lonely?" Of course, there was no response. People around her chuckled, shaking their heads at the sight of a little girl talking to a hunk of stone. Someone even pulled out their phone, recording her with a smirk. But Lily didn't care. She felt something she couldn't explain. So she kept talking. Every morning she stopped at the statue. She told it about her day, about her favorite books, about the mean kids at school who didn't understand her. She shared her secrets, her dreams, her fears. And then, one night, everything changed. It was late, far too late for an 8-year-old to be outside alone. But Lily wasn't in her bed. She had woken up from a dream, a strange dream, where the statue had called her name. It was just a dream, wasn't it? She couldn't shake the feeling. Something was pulling her toward it. So, barefoot and still in her pajamas, she slipped out of her house and ran to the town square. The streets were empty, bathed in the eerie glow of the streetlights. The air was thick with silence. And then she saw it, the statue, standing exactly where it always had. But something was different. Her heart pounded. She stepped closer, and then it happened. A whisper, not from the wind, not from the trees, from the statue. Lily's breath caught in her throat. Her small hands trembled. The whisper was faint, almost like a sigh carried by the night air, but she heard it. One word, her name. Lily. Lily froze. The night air suddenly felt heavier, pressing down on her tiny frame. Her mind raced, searching for a logical explanation. Maybe she imagined it. Maybe it was just the wind twisting through the old town square. But deep inside, she knew better. She took a shaky step forward, her bare feet cold against the stone pavement. Did you just say my name?" she whispered, her voice barely louder than the rustling leaves. Silence. The statue stood motionless, just as it always had. Its stone face was blank, its hollow eyes staring into the distance. Maybe she had made a mistake. Maybe she was just sleepy. She let out a small, nervous laugh. "I must be going crazy," she murmured, rubbing her arms, and then Lily. This time it was clearer, more distinct. A deep, sorrowful voice, not booming or ghostly, but soft, gentle, as if it had waited a long time to be heard. Lily's stomach twisted. She wanted to run. Every part of her body screamed at her to turn around, to go home, to bury herself under the covers and pretend this never happened. But something else, something stronger, kept her rooted in place. Slowly she reached out. Her small fingers trembled as they brushed against the cold, rough stone of the statue's base. And then crack! The sound echoed through the empty square. Lily jumped back, her heart slamming against her ribs. A thin line appeared across the statue's surface, like a crack in old porcelain. Dust trickled down, catching in the dim glow of the streetlights. The statue was breaking, and beneath it, something moved. Lily gasped, stumbling backward. The stones split wider, revealing something underneath, something that had been hidden for years. A hand. Not stone, not lifeless, a real, human hand. Lily's breath came in short, panicked gasps. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. She could only watch in stunned silence as the crack widened, spreading like lightning through the statue's body. Then one final shudder, the statue collapsed, and standing in its place, covered in dust and time itself, was a man. His clothes were tattered, his skin pale as if he hadn't seen the sun in decades. He fell to his knees, gasping for air, his chest rising and falling as if he had just woken from the deepest sleep imaginable. And then, with wide, desperate eyes, he looked straight at Lily. "You set me free," he whispered. Lily's legs felt like jelly. She wanted to run, to scream, to do something, but she couldn't move. Her body was frozen, her mind struggling to catch up with what she was seeing. The man, if he was a man, looked as if time had forgotten him. His hair was tangled, his clothes worn and threadbare. Dust clung to his skin like he had been buried beneath the earth for centuries. But his eyes were the strangest part. They weren't old or tired. They were alive, grateful. "You," Lily's voice cracked. "Who? What are you?" The man let out a shuddering breath, running a hand over his face as if trying to remember something long lost. I don't know," he whispered. "It's been so long, I didn't think anyone would ever hear me." Lily swallowed hard. "Hear you?" He nodded, his gaze filled with something she couldn't quite understand. Relief, sadness, hope, all tangled together. "I was trapped. For years. Decades. Maybe longer. I lost track of time. I was supposed to be forgotten." His voice shook. "But you heard me?" Lily's heart pounded. The words barely made sense, but deep down she knew he was telling the truth. She had felt the sadness in the statue before. She had known something was different. The man looked up at the sky as if seeing it for the first time. A single tear carved a path through the dust on his cheek. "I thought I would die in there. I thought I already had." He turned back to Lily. "But you spoke to me. You believed in me." Lily's throat tightened. "But, how did this happen? How did you get trapped?" A shadow crossed his face. He looked past her, toward the empty streets as if searching for something, or someone. Then he exhaled slowly. "It was a punishment." His voice was hollow now. "A long time ago I did something unforgivable." Lily's fingers clenched into fists. "What did you do?" The man hesitated. A war raged behind his eyes. Then he whispered, "I told the truth." The words hung between them, heavy and sharp. Lily frowned. "The truth?" He gave a bitter smile. "And for that I was cursed." Lily's pulse thundered in her ears. A curse, a real curse. It sounded like something from a storybook. But this wasn't a fairy tale. This was happening right now. She swallowed hard. "Who did this to you?" The man didn't answer right away. His hands curled into fists, dust slipping through his fingers. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "They might still be watching." Lily shivered. A gust of wind swept through the square, rattling the trees. The air suddenly felt colder, heavier, like unseen eyes were pressing down on them. And in that moment, she realized something chilling. The town square had never been this quiet before. Lily's breath hitched. The weight of silence around them was suffocating, unnatural. It was as if the whole world was listening. She glanced around the empty square. The lamplight flickered, the shadows stretched too long. and for the first time she felt an overwhelming sense of wrongness. Someone, or something, knew. She turned back to the man, her voice barely a whisper. "Who are they?" The man's gaze darkened. "The ones who never wanted me to be found." A shiver crawled down Lily's spine. "Listen to me," the man continued, his voice urgent now. "You have to leave. Right now. Forget this ever happened. Forget me." Lily shook her head. "I can't just—" "You have to." His grip tightened on her wrist, his fingers cold as stone. "You don't understand. They won't let you go if they know you helped me." Lily's pulse pounded in her ears. But who are they? What did you do?" The man swallowed hard, his expression tortured. Then finally he said, "I was a prince." Lily's mouth went dry. "A long time ago I discovered a secret," he continued. "A truth so dangerous, so powerful, that those in control, those who ruled, couldn't let it be known. So they silenced me." He let out a bitter laugh. "Not with death. Number, that would have been too kind. They wanted me to suffer, to be forgotten, to be buried in stone while the world moved on without me." Lily's head spun. A secret? A lost prince? It was impossible, wasn't it? "But how can you be alive?" she whispered. He exhaled shakily. "The curse. It kept me in a state between life and death, a prisoner in my own body, unable to move, unable to scream, just watching." He shuddered. "Until you." Lily's stomach twisted. She had freed him. But if what he said was true, she wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was part of this. Her fingers trembled. "What do we do?" The man opened his mouth to answer. And then a sudden whoosh. The lamplights flickered violently. The air thickened, humming with unseen energy. The ground beneath them trembled. Lily gasped. The man's eyes went wide with terror. "They know!" A deep, guttural whisper filled the air. No words, just a sound, a warning. Lily's chest tightened. She felt it. Something massive, something ancient, pressing down on them like a storm about to break. The man grabbed her shoulders. "Run! Now! But run!" And then the shadows moved. Lily's feet barely touched the ground as she ran. The wind roared past her ears, but it wasn't just wind. There was something else in it, a whisper, a breath, a presence that shouldn't exist. The shadows slithered across the cobblestones, chasing her like living things. Behind her, the man stumbled. He gritted his teeth, trying to move faster, but it was as if the world itself was pulling him back. Lily spun around. "No, come on!" The man reached for her, his fingers trembling. "I can't. They're still holding me." Lily's mind raced. The curse. It wasn't gone. It had only weakened when she spoke to him. A sharp whisper coiled through the night air, laced with something ancient and cruel. "He does not belong in your world." The shadows lunged. Lily screamed. Without thinking, she grabbed the man's hand and yanked with everything she had. For a second, nothing happened. And then, a deafening crack. The air split open, and a force like 1,000 voices crying out in fury erupted from the ground. The shadows reeled back, shrieking. The man gasped, stumbling forward as if an invisible chain had snapped. Lily didn't wait. She pulled him with her, running as fast as she could. The town square blurred around them. The whispers turned to roars. Buildings trembled, windows shattered. They had to get away, had to. A blinding flash. Lily squeezed her eyes shut, her body lifted off the ground. Her breath vanished, like she had been sucked into nothingness. And then silence, cold, empty. Lily's heart pounded. Slowly she opened her eyes. She was standing at the edge of the square. The statue, the one that had been him, was gone. The entire pedestal was empty. Not a single trace remained. She spun around. Where? And then she saw him. The man stood a few feet away, staring at his own hands. His fingers trembled, flexing, real and warm and alive. His breath hitched. I'm free? Lily's chest ached. Yes, his eyes, those ancient, haunted eyes, filled with something she had never seen before. Hope. Then he turned to her. You saved me. Lily let out a shaky breath. I heard you. The man nodded, his expression unreadable. No one ever listened before. Lily swallowed hard. She could still feel it, the weight of the past, the echoes of what had happened. And yet, something was different. The night air was lighter, the town brighter. He was no longer a prisoner. But then his gaze shifted past her. His shoulders stiffened. Lily turned. A single black mark smouldered on the ground where the statue had once stood. A mark that hadn't been there before. And in the wind, just for a second, a whisper. This is not over. Lily shivered. The man clenched his fists. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned. Then let them come. And just like that, Lily knew. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning.